Kia ora. Kia ora e te whānau. Nau mahara mai. Welcome to Woo Table Kōrero. Tonight we have joining us the gorgeous Gina Melody Roore, Damaris Coulter, and the very gorgeous Precious Clark. But to kick us off, before we start our evening, before we start our kōrero on any mihi, I'd like to hand it over to the very lovely Gina Melody Roore, who's going to open us up with karakia. Over to you, please, Gina. Kia ora.
Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi o te pō kia tātou. Anei he karakia nā Krista o ko tīna wanitana. Mana hua te tapu o matua te kore, mana hua te tapu o matua te pō. Mana hua te tapu o matua te ao, mana hua te tapu o matua te hawa. Mana hua te tapu o matua te ike. Mana hua te tapu ki ēnei pia ki ēnei tauira. Tuturu ōwhiti whakamaua kia tīna, haumi e hui e, tai ki e.
Thank you so much, Gina. Really appreciate it. He mihi ana ki a tātou kua whakakotahi mai ki te tautoko i te kaupapa o te pō nei, tēnā rawa atu tātou. So kia ora, nau mahara mai, welcome whānau. Super excited to have you all join us this evening. Excuse me, got a 6-year-old tonight. Our darling little boy, Nikora Narapo. So we're going to start off with our first speaker, and I'm going to ask the lovely Precious Clark to join me. Nau mahara mai, welcome, Presh. How are you?
E pai anei, hoanga mihi ki a koe o tira kia tātou katoa e hui mai nei I tēnei pō.
Before we get started, Presh, I just want to mihi to you. We know that it's been a challenging week over the last week for you and your whānau. We know that your mother has been unwell as well as your father. So just want to send a whole lot of aroha from us to you this evening, and just a big mihi to you for joining us. Thank you for being so courageous and joining us this evening, sister. Really, really appreciate it. So if you could please introduce yourself, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Tēnā koe. Tēnā tātou e te iwi, he uri tēnei o Ngāti Whātua, te uri o hau, Ngāti he katoa, I te taho tōku mama, I te taho tōku pāpā, he Pākehā hau, 5th generation New Zealander, ka noho ai ki runga I taku papa kāinga ki o rākei, ki roto o tāmaki, I o te whare nui ko tumutumu whenua. No reira ko māhuhu ki te rangi te waka, ko wai te mata, te moana, ko maunga kia te maunga. Hai, ko Precious Clark, hau e mihi atu ana ki a koutou katoa.
Thank you, Presh. We wanted to start off this kōrero this evening around, this is around the journey of me, so really the journey of you. I'm aware of all your wonderful accomplishments in life, and I think it'd be great for you to share, just a bit about your upbringing. Who were your superheroes as you grew up? Who were the people that you looked up to, who influenced you with regards to your upbringing? I know that you've practiced law, but what led you to who were your influences with regards to the person that you are today? So, yeah. So if we could kind of talk about your upbringing, that'd be lovely. So tell us more about that as a child and as a teenager. Oh. It's always scary.
I've had a wonderful life. I've had a very loved upbringing by my parents, Patu and Nobi, and I grew up in Greylin. And back then, Greylin was a predominantly Pacific environment, so I grew up with mostly Pacifica neighbours and was raised in their houses as much as I was raised in my own home. So I'm very grateful because I learnt a lot from my Pacifica neighbours. I learnt about service, and I learnt about care. But I was always very connected to my own marae. Mum would always bring us home to Ōrākei. It was a 2-bus ride trip, about 40-minute bus ride altogether, so not far. And certainly would stay up here every holidays with my cousins. But I feel very fortunate. I was conceived during the occupation of Bastion Point, and so I am born into that story. And I'm lucky because I have a living superhero. and he's had a massive influence in my whole life, and that's my Uncle Joe Hawke. And Uncle Joe really nurtured us. He took massive stands on behalf of our people, and we're able to enjoy the fruits of his labour. And Uncle Joe would create opportunities for me. So I remember when I was went to Canada with Uncle Joe and some of my other kaumātua to take the Māori of the Commonwealth Games over there, and got to really sit with them, my Uncle Hugh, my Auntie Ruby, those kaumātua who have now passed. And I remember in 7th form, Uncle Joe phoned me after school and asked me what I was up to, and asked me if I wanted to come and meet Nelson Mandela. So I got to go and meet Nelson Mandela, and when I got there, Uncle Joe said to me, okay, you're going to do the karanga for him. And what an honour that was, to stand alongside my auntie who was my tutor and my access to karanga, to do that alongside her for such an amazing person. And then when I finished law school and moved to Wellington, I lived with my Uncle Joe because he was in Parliament at the time. And so he's probably been my biggest and enduring and superhero in my life, and one of the big influences that I have. I guess in my career, I'm influenced and inspired by many of my peers, many of my friends, the likes of Liana Potu, who you and I both adore, the likes of Anna Morrison, who I grew a very strong relationship with in London, as well as being at law school and living in Wellington together, the likes of Miriana Hond, who's now over in Doha at Al Jazeera, and my best friend Sama Wharekawa, who just continues to inspire and challenge me and love me despite everything that I do. I'm really blessed to have incredible peers who support me and invigorate me, challenge me, inspire me. And I can't go past my parents. They're incredible, extremely loving folks who are adored by all of their children and all of their mokopuna and by their wider whānau. So I'm getting teary-eyed. But they're just such cool parents. Like, I'd have to say that my mum's one of the coolest chicks on the face of this planet. And, she's always got a cool story, always mischievous. She's a very mischievous woman, and always bringing laughter. One of the things my mum used to do, which this is indicative of her personality, is on our table at home, she'd always have kai on the table, fruit or nuts or whatever, but she used to have a tray of chocolates, and some of those chocolates were actually rubber chocolates. And we would all sit there waiting to watch people pick up the rubber chocolate and bite it and go, what the heck? And then we'd all laugh. So that's who my mum is. She's just this mischievous character. And my dad is, he's Pākehā, born and raised in Otago, and served in the Navy. And Dad has just always been a really strong rock for all of us. Strong provider, very, very kind, very family orientated. Always had a garden, so while we didn't have heaps of money, but we had heaps of kids, we were always well fed because we always had vegetables that Dad grew, and we'd always have 5 veggies on our plate at every meal that we had. And yeah, just a really well-respected and intelligent man, and also a Pākehā who was very proud of his Pākehā heritage. And while very loved by my mum's family, he never tried to be Māori, but he respected our culture, and he was the one that pushed me into Māori medium education and made me do te reo and pushed me that way. So those are my influences. Oh, sorry, and another one, my sisters. My sisters are much older than me, and they raised me, so they get a big pat on the back for all of the good things that I do.
How many brothers and sisters do you have, Precious?
I've got 3 sisters and 4 brothers.
Wow. And you're the baby?
No, I've got another baby brother.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, I'm the second youngest, and but they're all bossier than me.
Wow. No. Whoa, no. And listening to all those people that have been influences in your life, I know that your mum and dad, probably your biggest superstars, but it must be amazing at some point to have met people like like Nelson Mandela, who many of us, can remember him walking out of prison and the work that he's done for his people. But I'm pretty sure, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you've also met Obama. Would I be correct in saying that you've met Barack Obama also?
Yeah. I have with them alongside some other wahine toa, some other wahine Māori leaders throughout Aotearoa. So yeah, that was a privilege. And at our marae Roorake, we often host a lot of dignitaries. So we get to engage with a number of incredible people like Oprah Winfrey and
yes, of course, yes.
All sorts of martial arts stars. So we're very blessed up here to be based in Tamaki and be a point of contact for those type of people with our culture.
And within those people that you've met, is there anyone that particularly stands out to you? You just think, wow, like they've left an indelible mark.
Yeah, that would hands down be Nelson, and the reason for that is because of the way he made us feel. He bathed you in light.
Wow.
That's the feeling, being bathed in light with this omnipresent person who you could not feel any ill will in any part of his body. Everything was very loving and very generous. And I've always thought how incredible it could be to, in my leadership journey, to bathe others in light. I don't meet quite the same standard that Nelson Mandela does, nowhere near, but it's a nice goal. It's a nice goal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And your parents must be incredibly proud of the mahi that you've done and the mahi that you do, Presh.
Yeah, they're proud of all of their kids and they're proud of all of their boys. And so, I'm one of the gang that they're proud of. They might not understand what I'm up to, but they're certainly behind me.
It sounds like my kids. They're like, oh, I'm not quite sure what mum does, but she does something, I don't think my dad quite understands it either, but he thinks it's good, bub. It's good, bub, And in terms of the superstars that you mentioned in your life, we don't want to, put one of them above the other, but is there someone who in your life has really stood out for you personally in terms of, would it be Liana or Summer or, not that we want to pick one, but, is there someone who's...
My approach to it is to add another name rather than have to choose. And that would be a very good and respected friend called Sandy Burgum, who is a coach. And she delivered the Global Women's Breakthrough Leadership Program, and I was fortunate enough to be on that with her. And she was my coach for that program as well as being the organizer. But we've stayed very closely connected ever since then, and that was in 2014. And she really pushed me and asked me some tough questions and continues to give me kicks up the bum when I need them. And so what I'm doing now with my consulting practice and what I'm doing now with Te Kā, which is my Māori Cultural Competency Training Program, she forced me into that space to give it a go. She challenged me to give it a go. She nurtured me to give it a go. So when I first designed my program, she was one of my cohort members. She let me use her penthouse as the location. And she trains in that space as well. So and she also brought me into her own programs to practice, and practice my technique and practice my facilitation. And she continues to be my coach, continues to be my mentor, continues to be my friend, and continues to bring people to my business. And so she's been a massive impact, and I've really enjoyed the friendship with her.
What have been some of your greatest learnings from that, what have been some of your, if you had to pick 2 or 3 things that have really resonated with you in terms of your learnings, what would they be?
On what space, Hannah? What do you
I think in giving back to others and leaving a legacy for others.
Yes. Yeah. Creating opportunity and creating space for others. So, there's a lot of talk about women in leadership and leaving the ladder down, but you don't often see the practice. And I prefer to kind of think of developing ecosystems, and so creating opportunity for others to step into. So I get asked quite a lot to go into different governance roles, and I will really assess if I'm the right person and if I have the capability and the time. And if it doesn't look like it's a natural fit for me, then I really do try to find ways to allow other Māori women in particular to step into that opportunity. And even within my own business, you know, the importance of having faith and belief that the people that you've got around you are amazing, and they demonstrate it every day. So, yeah, creating opportunity for others is something that I really enjoy doing.
Yeah.
And I guess in my business, in my space, I'm working more with non-Māori, increasingly more Māori who want to become more connected to their culture, but mostly non-Māori. And my intention is to help them fall in love with our culture as much as we do, as much as we love it.
Yeah.
And so even in that, I would say that my mindset as a teenager and in my 20s was not the right mindset to be doing the work that I do today. And the mindset that I've got today is that I love Pākehā. I am Pākehā, and I love our Pākehā people. And I really enjoy the friendships that I have built with Pākehā that help them understand our world and help them become champions of our world in the way that we need them to.
Awesome. Just two more questions. The first one being, what would you say are your pūmanawa?
Well, I'd say I'm a builder. So I consider myself to be a person who is confident and capable at bringing worlds together. That's probably my main one.
Take it into the room, please. Sorry.
I got that too. I got my
Yeah. I was like, yeah. Sorry.
I don't know. My next one might be aroha.
Yeah.
And confidence. I'm pretty confident. I like to give things a go. I'm a bit curious, so I just jump in and have a go. And if it works, fine. If it doesn't, oh well, keep quiet. I learned something.
And probably my last one is, I'm well aware that you know, in reading and being a friend with you on Facebook and having been a friend of yours now for quite some time, I think it's like 16 years. Yeah, around there somewhere. We're still only 30, no. How do you, and looking after others and looking after your business and your beautiful husband and your beautiful children and your whānau, what do you do for your well-being? How does Precious look after Precious?
I'll tell you what, mate, I'm rubbish at that. But what I'm starting to do is recognise that I'm getting tired with some things. You know, I don't have the same level of energy and I'm a bit too stretched. And I guess the first part is pulling that out and vocalising it to the people that need to hear it to help me move in a different direction. So, you know, I'm thinking more strongly about bringing more people into the fold to spread out the work. And so I think I found that person today. So pretty happy about that and actually looking to bring more people in. I schedule holidays and I don't budge on that. And when I go on holiday, things are turned off so that I disconnect from mahi and I connect into the environment and I connect into my kids and my husband. And I'm very grateful that, you know, the people around me, my staff, my colleagues, my husband, they let me know where they're at. And if they need me to step into awhi more, then I can do that. But if I can take the break off, they let me know and I can do that too. So I guess that open channels of conversation is really important. And then, I don't know, with my husband, he's such an incredible person. And my philosophy on that is that I try to be a kaitiaki of his happiness. I'm not solely responsible for his happiness. He's the primary person that's responsible for that. But I take being a kaitiaki of his happiness really seriously. And so that means that work can't take priority all the time. But if I'm honest with myself, I will work at the detriment of everything else. So I need my people around me to be honest about that. Yeah, but I'm really missing my friends at the moment, so I need to deal with that. And I'm just kind of I go off the flow. When I feel like I need my friends, then I move there. When I feel like I need nature, then I move there. When I feel like we're locked down on work, then I move there.
Yeah, I think your wairua and your tinana actually tells you it's whether you're actually listening to it or not, you know. So, I mean, thank you for sharing your kōrero. It sounds like you're really trying to, you know, get on the waka of well-being. And sister, sorry. Oh, cool!
It's one of my jobs for this. It's an electric one though, so you know it's not as hard, but
still good.
We're going to practice not having another car and instead having a bike. So we're trying to do some things to get our heartbeat up a little bit more than it has been in the last years. Awesome.
So I know you have to go, so I don't want to keep you. So whānau, Precious is now going to go and see her parents. So please, with all our aroha sister, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Thank you so much for making the time. As we've said, please pass on our biggest, hugest aroha to your parents. I look forward to meeting your mum and your dad. And take care, sister, and we'll catch up soon. Thank you so much for sharing with us this evening. Kia ora. Kia ora, thank you. And now we have joining us the very lovely, can be a little bit outspoken, but always very good fun, Damaris Coulter. No mahara mai, welcome, Damaris.
Kia ora, everyone. Precious, I love Precious so much.
So, Damaris, tell us a bit about who you are and where you're from.
Oh, kia ora, everybody. No karikari aho, ko mamaru te waka, ko haitutai marangai te marae, ko puhiki te maunga, ko Ngāti Kahu te iwi, te whānau moana te hapu, ko Damaris aho. So nice to be here. That was so lovely. Precious was amazing. I could have listened to her forever. What was the question? What do I need to?
No, you're fine now. I just want to share with all the whānau that Damaris is a month away from having her first baby. So, oh yeah, that's awesome.
I'm puffed. That was tough and standing up.
How are you feeling about that?
Yeah, good mostly. Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, I'm no spring chicken, so it's definitely a new experience, but it's been beautiful. I've been really lucky to have quite an easy pregnancy up until sort of now, where I'm feeling a bit tired. But just hearing Precious, actually, you don't quite know how to slow yourself down until you realize like how tuckered out you are, and then you're like, oh my god, I'm like so naked, you know. And you know, you don't want to put shoes on, so you're walking around the cafe in barefoot, and you're like, is this actually appropriate in the city? And then I don't want to put shoes on, you know. So everything goes out there. So yeah, it's definitely a new experience, but it's beautiful. I'm really fortunate to not have had any sort of like, you know, complications, or it's been a joy.
Well, you look amazing. I mean, you always look amazing, but you just look fresh and you got a glow. I know you probably heard that a million times from a million people, but that is very much how you look. Even through the screen, you look lovely. Now, I just want to talk about your upbringing, you know, where you were brought up, and tell us, who were your kind of superstars? Who were the people that you looked up to during the time that you were, you know, from a child to a teenager? Tell us about that.
It's quite funny. It's so similar to Precious, and I think a lot of Māori. Like, I was really lucky. I was brought up on the land that my tupuna, you know, rode in on. We were brought up in Kaitaia. So one set of grandparents were at Karikari Peninsula, and the other set of grandparents were in Peria. and my mum is Māori and my dad is Pākehā, and so my dad's family were on a farm and my mum's whānau were at the beach, and we were brought up in the bush just outside of the Mangamuka Gorge in between Mangamuka and Kaitaia. So we had this very, very natural upbringing for the first 10 years of our life. And really, it was kind of really similar, like our, I think, influences, we were kind of in other people's homes as much as our own, really similar again. Aunties and uncles and cousins and neighbours, you know. Back then you're in rural land, you know. I grew up with a party line and most people won't even know what a party line is. Literally, like Renee and I used to be in trouble for eavesdropping because we'd be like listening to we'd be like, you Coulter girls, we know that you're listening to us. And like, you know, you shared a phone line with like 20 other households, you know. I've gone from like dinosaur land to like swipey land. So, you know, we've had a really, and we had both grandparents, which is kind of quite rare, you know.
Yeah.
You know, not for long, you know, because they were a lot older, but you know, I knew my mum's parents and actually one of her and my great grandfather, and I actually knew my dad's parents and one of my great grandparents. So a lot of my I suppose people that I love and were really influenced from a young age with my family members, you know, my grandparents, my parents, you know. Again, I'm really fortunate to have like a solid like mum and dad who just literally the purpose on the planet was to give Renee and I every opportunity, and they worked their asses off to do so.
So is there you and your sister? Is there just the two of you?
It's the two of us, yeah.
And then
very extended,
yeah,
you know, just lots of our extended whānau around. We're really lucky.
And what is it that you're doing now, Damaris, in terms of mahi?
So currently, like other than baking this like PFE, what do I do? It was funny when you two were just talking about like no one really knows what we do, and like our parents, my dad's like, oh, so what do you do? He's like, that's a good work. You're like, you have no clue what I do you? Unfortunately, most of the time I have no clue what I do, because quite often people will be, what do you do? I think the best way to describe it is that I am an entrepreneur of ideas, and currently I am executing one of those ideas that I believe my tupuna put in my head and said, you're in charge of translating, so this is what you have to do. And so I've been working on it for a number of years, and it came out of the restaurant that I founded in 2009 with my sister on Karangahape Road, which you've been to. It's Coco's Cantina. So it was actually kind of aside from a million different things, but essentially Renee and I, when we grew up in Kaitaia, our aunt and uncle who were married at the time, he was Swiss German who came over to train chefs in like the 70s. He was in Hospo, and I think they may have met in Waitangi. I think they both, you know, there was a big hospitality tourism movement then in the 70s. And then they opened a restaurant the year I was born. And so for the 10 years that we grew up in the far north, we just were around that world. We were in that world of like kind of just, it was very visible hospitality. And it's very weird, right? Because like you're in the middle of the far north, and the scene was not exactly kicking it, but it kind of was, you know. So that kind of inspired Renee and I think always knew that we were going to be in hospo. We kind of just gravitated to feeding and manakiing and kind of like hosting people. And then I
almost think nurturing them, right?
Yeah. And I think just like coming from working class, you know, my dad's a diesel mechanic. My mum was always a woman of many talents, you know, but essentially when we moved from Kaitaia, from the far north to Auckland, Howick of all places, very traumatizing. She worked at New World and she was packing shelves, and so Renee and I had to get jobs very early. So I think, you know, maybe 11 or 12, we both had like milk run, paper run, worked in the bakery, And then that eventuated into, like, you always, I think, when you come from working class, you just tend to gravitate to those labor jobs.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time you're gravitating to hospitality, so you're dishwashing and you're waitressing and you're working at fish and chip shops. And then when Renee and I went traveling, I sort of headed more to Europe and Italy, and Renee was in the UK. And so we always did that, was always events and weddings and catering and parties, restaurants and bars.
And you know how you talk about this idea from your tūpuna? Actually, is that part of this whole hospo? So tell us a bit about this. Yeah.
What actually happened was, I think 10 years in hospo, in Coco's, and 10 years before that leading into and learning. And then obviously the years before that witnessing the realness, which is the idea that I'm currently working on, was a brainchild out of those learnings, out of witnessing the disparity between the haves and the have-nots, but the inequality between the people who mastered a trade and people who kind of just like jumped on the sort of coattails of people who they could see a trend. So the idea is essentially not a new idea. It's all it is I've created a platform that showcases independent owner-operated businesses wherever you are in the world, and it started in my field, which is hospitality. So currently, I think we started with 10 when I met you and your lovely lover Nikura, who shares the same birthday. Happy Libra birthday for last week. And so we started with 10, and now we've got 104. And and so the developers are currently working on expanding that to all industries, so retail, artisan boutique.
Right.
And so essentially what we're trying to do is, at the moment, unless you have a big budget, you can't really afford advertising and visibility. And all I wanted to do was just equalize that. And I believe my tūpuna put this kind of blueprint in my mind about sort of 7 years ago. And it was funny when you were asking, Precious, about, you know, your pūmanawa, and I was thinking about like mine, and it is kind of like, I feel like I have an acute awareness for problem solving or not problem solving, like dishonesties. When I see dishonesty in the world, I have an acute awareness of how to undo that knot.
So I have seen, which actually kind of leads us, because I know you've been protesting about trees, right?
It always comes back to like something that I'm like flipping a table over.
Well, I mean, you know, the thing I know about you is, it's funny that it's called the realness, because if I think about someone that's really real, very real, kind of a, excuse the language, no shit kind of a girl, it really is you. Like, you're a pretty straight shooter, right? You don't kind of waff around. And well, that's my observation anyway. And it's a huge. So tell me about these trees, because I actually have seen a bit of media around this, and it's something in Auckland, isn't it, where these trees have existed for quite some time.
It's 58 Canal Road in Avondale. And to be honest, these trees are just one of the many trees that need protecting in Aotearoa. And when National were in, I think maybe 2 terms ago, they removed the tree protection law, which meant that kind of people, developers, landscape, anyone, you could just kind of do anything you wanted. And so it's not just about the canal trees. It's actually, for me, it just makes sense to not cut down 100-year-old native trees that we have a shortage of. And it kind of does make sense when we have our beautiful Ngāti Whātua whānau planting native trees in the city, and then we have our same council supporting that tree planting, cutting down trees in the part of the city. And so if we can't actually, in this day and age, with the science and the research and the intel, if we can't coexist with these trees, and if we can't develop buildings and homes around that, I think that there's a real dishonesty there. We can do that. And what it is, it's just, it comes down to sort of profit and greed So I think what you're trying to say is like, yeah, quite often I'm in those areas which seem, you know, like people think I'm a troublemaker. Like I really, like I'm a Libra. I do not like conflict. I'm like, but it's quite often areas, you end up in kind of areas because you can see such a clarity around how simple it can be sorted. You quite often you come across as this kind of crazy activist, you know.
Well, do you, like, if I was to reframe that, and a friend of mine, Gail, would giggle at me saying that, but if you reframe that, it's really just something that you're passionate about, that you intrinsically know is right. So, you know, it's like when I went on a hike through Maungatautari, you know, and we came across, and we went through the old Māori track. My kids are kora kikahukura, so, you know, that's the maunga we went to. We came across an 800-year-old tree, you know, like that tree is going to be there long after I'm gone and will continue to be so. And there is something amazingly awesome about standing in front of that. Like, it's like going down to Queenstown, you know, or going down to Southland, and anywhere actually, when you look at our maunga, when you look at our awa, our rivers, our moanas, and you know that long after we're gone, they're still there, and there's something majestic and beautiful about them, and there's something that fills your soul.
It's actually as well, is that I think that, like, people like you and I, obviously we're a little bit more aware of that, and I think that sometimes the people, the positions that are in charge of protecting that, maybe they're just a little bit further away from that awareness. We all know that, like, we're heading back towards, like, giving Indigenous voices the sort of authority, because we are the kaitiaki. We do have an intuitive understanding of how to care for these things that keep us all alive.
Yes.
And quite often, well, always, it's not at the cost of profit or people or papatūānuku. So, I mean, it's a really funny one. It's that it makes sense, right, to us to not cut them down. But quite often, we're guilty about kind of, you know, I remember we were in front of the bulldozer, you know, trying to stop these people cutting these trees down. And you do feel guilty, like, oh, should I be doing this? This is illegal. It's like, but that's bizarre, right? That you're protecting you're protecting your tupuna, which, because we're all made up of the same thing. If you just remove all the noise that we've made up of this kind of structure, and what everyone, like, what makes me laugh, and, you know, it is great that you know, we're well-being, you know, that's what we're doing, you know, we're all connecting back to well-being. We pay all this ridiculous money to eat organic food and do yoga and be mindful, and what happens is, it's like we're paying for something that all we need to do is go and protect the trees. It's pretty simple that we need to do.
And you shouldn't have to pay money to be well. That's kind of my whakaaro, you know. You don't need to. And which kind of leads me to, you know, what are your superpowers? What are your pūmanawa, Damaris? Tell me what they are.
I mean, flipping tables. I'm a very good table flipper. What are my pūmanawa? I think seeing through the nonsense, you know, and probably calling it. I don't have a problem. Quite often people, I think the people pleasing in a lot of people, and that's actually probably my strength and my weakness, because it's kind of, a lot of the time you're catching people up, you know, and you're kind of, I could be a bit more gentler or kinder in delivering that. But I'm kind of like, bro, we are here for such a short time. Stop, you know? And so I think like, if anything, I feel like my tupuna gave me extra DNA to plug straight into the mainframe of, like, the old world. Like, I feel like I get a proper, a direct signal from the tupuna. Like, it kind of is a curse and a what's the opposite of curse, baby brain?
A gift.
And it is like, but sometimes that can be very lonely, and it can be very you have to be really brave to carry that kind of direct line, and it does kind of isolate you a little bit, because you do naturally understand what's required, but it's quite a lonely world. It's not one that is easy, we might say. So I suppose they've kind of given me a direct line, and maybe they've also given me strength to be able to articulate that and carry it and walk in that, which maybe sometimes you don't always get. So I've been blessed with both of those.
And sometimes, what we consider weaknesses are actually just areas that we're still learning, the areas of learning that we still need to, have. I just want to ask quickly before we finish up, what do you do for your well-being, Damaris? What is it that Damaris does for her?
I'm actually quite good at it.
Yes. Tell me how good you are. Tell us.
I go for massages, and I go. So I have like a circuit that I go. Yeah, that's a good one. So I've got a real circuit wherever I am, and it's more kind of like even if I'm not going for me, even if I feel like I'm not vibing and I'm like, oh, I don't need anything, or it's not my, because I also have like a little thing that if I go into the op shop, and if you go into the first op shop and you don't get anything, you're going to have a bad op shop. Just forget about it. Like there's like a tohu, but if you go well, you're like, oh, look at that crazy like mincer that I will never ever use. That's going to be a good one. So op shopping is a really great way for me to decompress. Maybe it's kind of a smell, and it's kind of like a shimmy, and it's kind of, and you go to areas like, if I'm a bit sad, I quite like haberdashery and linen and crockery.
Oh, you are speaking to my heart right now. So my whole outfit tonight is, op shop stuff, and I find immense pleasure. And I'm like you, sometimes if I'm feeling unsettled, there's something about tactile, the old, touching something or finding something. And before I finish with you, I mean, this has got two little characters missing from it. But, when you go into an op shop and,
music box.
Yeah, and it's a music box and it sings to you.
Yeah. And that's what I think, I think that if anything, I think, and I'll close on this, it's about connecting me. It's reconnecting me. And I think that probably actually is also one of my superpowers, is like connecting my choices. So who I spend time with, who I spend my money with, what I eat, all of those things. That is what gives me goodness, and like when I can connect, and it does, just speaking quickly on kind of op shopping, that is my mantra. Like I support Māori businesses first.
Yes.
I support owner operators, and then I would support like op shopping, recycling. So I did 2 years where I only supported Māori businesses, and that was like such an amazing journey to uncover all of our beautiful Māori businesses. And that it's like it goes on to, we've developed that into the realness actually, where there's we've got an Indigenous feature that showcases our Māori businesses. Yes, that's
awesome. Somebody just put up a comment, op shop wellness. I think you and I need to get together and talk about that idea. But I just have to tell you just quickly, Scots was actually, so I grew up in Melbourne, immigrated back here to Aotearoa 20 years ago, and I remember walking into Scots, and there was something about Scots, and at the time there was an Italian man, Antonio, that worked there, and it just, I was missing home so much, Melbourne being home at the time, and there was something about Scots that just reminded me of home, and I go in there a lot, especially on the weekend when they have tiramisu. So Yeah, it's been one of my faves, and I know it's part of the realness. So, whānau, check out the realness. And I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, Damaris, for joining us this evening. We'll get you. You know, we'll get you back in just a minute, you know, after we've spoken to Gina. Yeah, we've got lots of wonderful comments. So thank you so much, Damaris. It's been wonderful having you. We'll get you back shortly. Thank you, sister. And now we're going to welcome, oh, she's a joy, this one. We're going to welcome Gina Melody Roore. No maharamai, welcome, Gina.
Kia ora, sister.
Kia ora, sister. How are we going?
Oh, we're breathing. That's the main thing.
So Gina and I go way back. But Gina, before we start, can you please introduce yourself, sister, where you're from, and a bit about your whānau? Kia ora.
Kia ora. Kia ora tātou. Ko te pai kōrero o Tongariro me tararua ngā pai maunga. Ko rangiti kei te awa, te aroa me tainui ngā waka. Ko Ngāti Waiwai rātou, ko Ngāti Pikiahu, me Bonnie Conlon i County Mayo, ngā hapu. Ko Ngāti Tūwhare tō rātou, ko Ngāti Raukaua, te iwi Pākehā me Airani ngā iwi. Ko Gina Melody Roore tōku ingoa. My name's Gina, born and bred on the shores of the Rangitike, in the centre of the University of Martin. That's where I'm from, whānau.
Tell me how many children, and we have a delightful husband, I'm sure of it.
We do. I have one husband, only one. You'll see them, they're all up on the back behind me. Rawhenua Roore is my tāne, 20-something years now. And my two tamariki, our two tamariki, Hine Matariki and Mataora.
Oh, awesome, sister. So when I say that Gina and I go way back, we worked together at Te Wānanga Aotearoa. And recently, sister, you left the Wānanga after how many years?
Yes, 18 years. Just clocked over 18.
Wow. And so what are we doing with ourselves now, Gina?
So when I left the Wānanga, I didn't have a job. I just sort of waited for the universe to say you're going there. I resonated with Damaris's kōrero about the tupuna. I liken myself to a little Lego piece on a Lego board where my tupuna just moved me around where I'm meant to be and what I'm supposed to be doing. So I waited and I had a couple of job interviews and I scored a couple of jobs in a couple of places. I am currently working at He Puna Hauora here in Palmerston North, which is partly whānau ora navigation as well as Māori health, which we cover all sorts, and I'm going to cover all sorts. I am in a new role, Kaiwhakapuaki Waiora is the name of the role, where we will be working towards connecting whānau with health services, and alongside the navigators and the whānau ora mahi that they do.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about your upbringing and who were your superstars or who were your influences in your life as you were growing up to become the beautiful wahine that you are today, Gina?
So born and bred on the shore of the Rangitike in the centre of the Universe, Martin, of course. Although we weren't brought up in a Māori world as such, my older brother John Paul and I were lucky enough to have met my mum's mum, Hine Mata, and I had her for 7 precious years of my life in the beginning there, and later on down the track our little brother came along, Anaru, and he benefited from the teachings and learnings of our grandfather, Kotahi Hepara Eru, or otherwise known as Joe Eru. I think that they left us with enough magic to help us make informed decisions about what directions we were going to move in and go in. Fully supported by both our parents, Georgina and Chris, and my dad's parents, Paul and Josephine Melody. I was popped off to Tirikina Māori Girls College, one of the first day students. which is where my mātauranga Māori journey really began, I think, when I reflect back on the journey. I had many great influences at the kura with, you know, some of the wāhine that I went to school with, along with our teachers. But alongside that journey, I was also part of the Art Confederation, which is the Ātiawa Raukaua Toa Rangatira Kaupapa o Whakatipuranga Ruamano, where I had many great teachers from Piki Kiriama, Sean Ogden, Tipiwihi Paihana, Krimi Hana Heke, Keelan Ransfield, Tasha Ropata, Charlotte Simmons, Roy Mata Kiriyama, Angie Stretch, just, you know, some great role models and teachers that have, you know, become wonderful also, you know, so very lucky. After school, I shot the nest straight away and took off over to Whanganui, and I actually started a sports and fitness program, but it wasn't like what I thought it was going to be. So I rolled down to the Māori department at the Whanganui Polytech and found Uncle Morven Simon, who was running the Te Kōpai Te Reo Māori course, and yeah, you know, through the kaitiaki in our Māori spaces, I was kindly moved from that course over to that course, and without any additional costs, etc. So I learned very young, you know, you could do these things if you just talk to the right people. And also where I was turned out to be a little kaitiaki at Pākaitore for that time as that was going on down there. Got my tino rangatiratanga on. But I really, you know, it was really quite challenging because of my, you know, my non-Māori grandparents and my dad and his whānau. You know, I had to really think about what I was doing in doing that. So it really taught me or opened up my eyes to, you know, like my heart and soul was there doing, you know, serving the kaupapa, but at the same time I needed to think about them. And I remember marching down the main street in Whanganui with our signs and things like that. And every time there was a camera, I'd hide behind someone or hide behind the sign, because I was like, because I didn't know how to do it. So like, so that was a really big learning, and it was interesting, that's for sure. And then following that, we did a whenua and I did a 6 months in Australia, but I didn't last there long because it wasn't my whenua and I couldn't sort of you know, get used to it, I suppose. So we came home and whenua was working in the shearing sheds before we went over. So off we went to the shearing sheds, and I had many great journeys around Aotearoa, just learning, you know, like getting just picking up how to do things in the sheds, as well as meeting lots of people. And we got to go down south and, you know, do a stint down there and all up the Rangitike and the Whanganui rivers. We got to work up there and see the beautiful country we've got. So
I'm just
that
amazed.
was months ago.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm just amazed because I'm thinking to myself, wow, I knew this lady for 16 years, and this is some of the first time that I'm hearing this, you know, the sharing sheds. I'm thinking, wow, that's pretty, you know. So wow. And because my knowledge of you is that you've worked within the kind of HR space for a significant amount of time.
Yes, well, so 18 years ago, I met the famous Diana and Manu Kawana when we moved to Papahoia.
Yes.
So Kapahaka started with Kapahaka, and we were doing the regionals. Diana moved from one role, she was at another job, and she started at Te Wānanga Aotearoa, and then I wasn't working at the time, and I was doing a administration course, and I went to the Wānanga and asked if I could come and do some work experience. Could I please come and work for free so I could get some work experience, and you know, so on and so on. At the time, Mike Watson was the campus director, and yeah, at the time, so this was in the process, and at the same time, my grandfather was transitioning. He was up in Auckland, had distinct cancer, and I was up there, and I got a phone call from a job interview that said they wanted to trial me for 2 weeks, and I was like, oh, I don't think so. But what do you mean trial me? Like, I'm good enough, man. Come on.
Oh, good for you.
She was like, okay, just wait a minute. I think I've got something for you. And so she, I'm still waiting to go and work for free at the wānanga. And she rings me back and says, okay, I've got you a job. It's for a fixed term, blah, 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 blah. I was like, yeah, I'll take it. So my grandfather sent me on my way and he told me I was not allowed to come back to Auckland. I had to go and do my, get the job and do the mahi. And he lasted another 2 months after that, after I got offered the job. And it was my first, I'm like, when I get offered the job, I'm like, yeah, but my grandfather's dying. Like, he's going to die.
Yes.
And I'm going to have to, go away from work and stuff. And she's like, don't worry about that. Get back and come and start. And
that was, and the rest is history, right?
Yeah, because absolutely.
The wānanga, if anything, was incredibly supportive. I was, a single mother through most of my time at the wānanga, and I couldn't have wanted a better place to have been with regards to the support that I received.
Totally.
And how have you found, since leaving the wānanga, you're on a new journey, you've started a new path for yourself. And what are your pūmanawa? What are your pūmanawa, Gina, that, if standing in your light, if you were to stand in your light and you had a spotlight on you, I know I'm thinking to myself, she's going to find this question hard. But, if we would just, take away what we kind of deemed, when I think about Che saying, Che Wilson talking about, it's whakahihi, but actually it's just what we're naturally good at. So what are your pūmanawa? What are your taonga,
Yes, right?
Yeah.
That sounded weird.
No.
Anyway, so I think for me, one of my biggest superpowers is holding space. I'm like knowing where to go, where to be, tuning in and listening and sort of just receiving what's required in a moment in time and going there, really.
And that do you think that that's come from all the wonderful learnings of your grandparents who obviously were influential in your life, and then all the, all your life experiences leading up to this moment?
Absolutely. The opportunities I've had, particularly in the mātauranga Māori spaces with, kai hoi waka, kapahaka, and te tūmataora, some of the mahi that I'm doing now in our business space, it's all a contribution to the person that I am today, the people that I have come across, come into my life, and the contributions that they have made. I am who, part and parcel of what they've offered me. So,
what's one of the things that you'd like to be remembered for? What's something that you'd like to leave behind for your children and your mokopuna and the generations to come? What would that be, Gina?
I think it would be aroha as well, that I'm an aroha person. I hope I'm an aroha person, and just, sharing and caring with whatever it is that you have, and I'd hope with my tamara and their children, my mokopuna, that they'll know me and be able to take up from that.
Awesome. And now one last question before we bring Damaris back. What do you do? Well, that, one of my passions is, and actually it's probably one of my pūmanawa is well-being, because it's about serving others, giving back to others. What do you do, Gina Melody Roore, for your well-being?
For me, I'm a basic girl, like you say, don't need to pay much, right? So, if I'm in a hui and I need that HR space, can get pretty hectic sometimes. I'm one for nature, look out the window, get away from a leaf on a tree to, hiki te wairua in those trying times. going to walk out the door. It was, you know, the privilege of being at Te Wānanga Aotearoa here at Hokowhitu campus and having Te Kupinga o Te Mātauranga at, you know, as your front doorstep. And the marae ātia, you just walk out there and, you know, no matter what's going on, you can instantly feel better. So I still go there and do that. I'm still at the wānanga, I'm just not on the payroll anymore, you know. You can take the girl out of the wānanga, you just can't take the wānanga out of the girl.
And just quickly, rongoa and or rewana and rongoa and rewana, your page. Just quickly tell us what inspired you to start that, and tell us what your vision is for that moving forward.
So my page started, it was back in 2013, and it wasn't rongoa and rewana. Sorry, 2017. I was doing the kaitiakitanga postgraduate diploma in kaitiakitanga at Te Wānanga Aotearoa. At the same time as I was studying, my framework was developing, as well as being asked to take my niece and my cousin over to the World Indigenous Nations Games in Alberta, Canada. So I'd originally set up the page as a space for whānau to follow our journey while we were over in Canada. And then couple of years, fast forward a year or so down the track, and you know, I'm putting my kaitiakitanga into practice and things like that. And our rewana bread we had been gifted from Diana and Manu after our wedding, and we've had that for over 12 years now. So over time I learned about kawakawa and making some rongoa products using doTERRA oils, and the tohu in my rongoa and rewana page came out of my framework, check yourself before you wreck yourself. And then rongoa and rewana fell out of that after I had I had done that journey. And then we got some of the whānau and I, Pikitia, Heke, Lindsay, Potama and Tapahia Heke, we went over to Wyoming last year actually to do what was it? We were sharing our Māori knowledge with, they had 40 rangatahi from the reservations come in and have a university experience at University of Wyoming with our Dr. Jaime, Angela Jaime. And instead of having the page being from when the girls and I went to Canada, I came up with changing it to the rongoa and rewana so that I could create a space that whānau could just join any journeys on, and the whānau that I met over in Canada, all around the world, whānau right around the world. So yeah, that's how that came about.
I have to say I love that page because I think it's unashamedly Māori and unashamedly Indigenous, and actually you're very good at capturing what's going on all over the place within our world, you know, within the Indigenous world and within Te Ao Māori. So I just want to acknowledge you for that. Thank you so much. I promised tonight that we'd keep to time, and we've gone a little bit over time. It's kind of a little bit typical, but when the kōrero is so rich and it's so wonderful, it's a bit difficult to just kind of, you know, finish it off. So thank you so much, Gina, for sharing your kōrero this evening. I'm going to ask Damaris to come back on screen.
Sorry.
If I could. No, kite pai. So if we could have Damaris back, that'd be lovely.
I'm here. In between cooking.
To Precious, who of course has gone to join her parents. It was a wonderful kōrero. Thank you, Damaris. Oh, is that the spunky fella in the back?
No, this is my cousin Bo, everyone.
Oh,
he's my dog. You know how you've got your dot that helps you?
Yes.
Yeah, because I've got baby brain, Bobo is like a Damaris translator.
Oh, I love Bo. But thank you, Damaris, for sharing, and same to Gina. It's always a honour and a privilege to host such amazing wāhine, doing amazing things, and the whole reason why Rootable Kōrero was born was because we wanted to feature the superstars within our community who are making impacts in our community, who are giving back and contributing. And, you know, it's all part, I think, of leaving a legacy for our children and our children's children and the generations that come. So I'm mihi to you all. Thank you so much for this evening. I really appreciate you.
And thank you, Gina. That was such a beautiful kōrero. I'm going to stalk you as soon as we hang up.
I think there's going to be a bit of stalking going on. So there's the realness, you know, with Damaris, and we've got Rongo and Lewana with Gina, and Precious has got her work too. So please, everyone, check them out. I am going to hand it over to my sister Gina to close us this evening. Thank you so much, sister, for opening us up. I just want to quickly mihi, and I know I've mihi to Precious, but to you both and Damaris, looking forward to seeing baby. And I just want to mihi to my little sister who's currently in labour in Melbourne, Australia, about to have my nephew, and I'm going to get teary, so I'm just going to hand it over to Gina. Thanks, Gina.
Kia ora koutou. Ngā mihi anō ki a koe Damaris, rawa ko Precious hoki. Ki a koe tui hana, ngā mihi sister mō tēnei. Whārangi me tēnei kōrero i tēnei pō. Nō reira, nā mnakitanga o te runga rawa me o tātou tupuna i ngā wā katoa tuturuturu o whiti whakamaua ki a Tina.
Tina.
Hui e.
Tai kia. And whānau, if you want to watch this and you haven't watched it tonight, it's on YouTube, or go to our Woo page and check it out. So much love to you both, and thank you everyone for listening this evening. It's been another wonderful night, another wonderful Woo Table Kōrero. Stay online, you two.